Gillian, thanks for agreeing to talk with our Engaging Networks community. Please tell us a bit about yourself and the work that you've done in the field of video for advocacy campaigning.
I have been a lifelong aficionado of the power and potential of video and storytelling to make a difference. I ran an organization called witness.org, for about a decade, which was all about how to use video to advance human rights campaigns. And right now I'm working with an NGO called Goodweave to tell the story of little Sanju. So this is an animated short. It's 3 minutes long, and it's the story of Sanju, who was a young girl who was forced into labor in a carpet factory in Nepal. Goodweave provides a child labor-free certification for rugs coming out of Nepal, Afghanistan, and India. So Goodweave certifies handmade rugs child labor-free, and at 5% of global market share, they've already reduced slavery in the handmade rug industry by 75%. If they can grow their market share to 17% of the handmade rugs, they can eradicate child labor in the rug industry. So this little 3-minute video tells the story of Sanju and how a Goodweave inspector went into a company where she was working illegally and took her out of the company, rescued her, sent her to a Goodweave school in Nepal, and she was eventually reunited with her family. So it's about the power and potential of consumers to make a difference. So what I wanted to share with you is how do you think about using a story like that to make a difference, particularly and especially in an online environment?
So what is your process when you begin to plan out a big project like that?
Even before you begin making your media, it's really important to be very clear. What is the problem and what is the solution? And what audience are we really trying to speak to in telling this story? So in this case, the problem is that there's millions of children, 168 million child slaves globally, in fact, but not all of them in the carpet industry. But the problem is that there's still millions of children enslaved in the carpet industry who don't get an education. The solution is to educate and activate consumers to demand child labor-free rugs so that those children aren't forced to work in the carpet industry and can get the education that they're entitled to. So we designed this piece of visual media, and then we're in a process of developing a whole series of partnerships. We have NGOs who are partnering as diverse as, MoveOn.org all the way to Oxfam International and Free the Slaves. So a broad range of sort of progressively oriented or humanitarian groups like Oxfam who are passionate about this issue. At the same time, we want to think about industry partners, so we can approach Macy's and retailers, Odegaard Rugs, and others who have print venues, online venues, and showrooms where they can show the story of Sanju at a point of sale and influence a consumer so that they may be willing to pay that small additional markup to get a rug that they can confirm is child labor free.
What about the media?
And then there's the media. We just launched on Labor Day, right? And the point was, even as we celebrate the rights of workers here in North America and our children are going back to school, there's 168 million children enslaved who don't have that option. So we're thinking of this as a rolling launch, and I think with video online, the question is always, how can we go viral? And we talked earlier about the Coney video, which really did go viral, even though it was 30 minutes in length, and usually the conventional wisdom is that you better be at 30 seconds if you want to go viral. Ours is 3 minutes. I personally think shorter is better, but you want to tell a really compelling story. And then you want to get it in front of the right audiences. So we have a rolling launch over the course of a year. We started with Labor Day. Our next big push will be around End Child Slavery Week, which is a week in November. Then we'll push again over International Human Rights Day in December, and so on. So thinking carefully about the story you can tell about the film, the range of partners that you can bring to the table to help you tell that story, and also what action people can take. So with Stand With Sanju, you don't want to just leave people hanging at the end. You can go to goodweave.org/Sanju and learn more about what you can do.
So there will be a call to action at the end of the film?
Right. It directs you to goodweave.org/Sanju, and you go, and right now you can sign the petition. Then you're immediately directed to share the video because we want to get the media out there as broadly as possible. You can also shop for a Good Weave certified rug or encourage other people to do the same. Or you can donate to support the work, fund a school like the one that Sanju is now being educated in since she's been rescued. So I think basically when it comes to online video, you need to think really carefully about what's the problem, what's the solution, what story are you going to tell, and who is your audience, to make sure you tell a story that resonates with that audience and that will move that audience. And what's the call to action at the end of it all? It doesn't need to be the same call to action. In fact, what you want is a film that's evergreen, a film that can outlive a given moment, that will have some shelf life, because it's a lot of time and energy to produce a film. And then you want it to set the stage for a broad range of advocacy asks. So ours right now, this is a film about child labor in the rug industry, but our ask relates to supply chain transparency, the Business Supply Chain Transparency Act. So it sets the stage for a lot of conversations. There's not a single ask we have to associate with this film. That invites other partners to think about and see themselves in the opportunity the film presents.
So Gillian, a lot of the films you've been associated with have been for the purpose of video for advocacy campaigns. What would you advise to nonprofit professionals who want to use film for fundraising?
Right, so if you're thinking to raise money using a film, you're most likely targeting individual donors. And individual donors, much more so than foundation donors, are compelled by stories. They're compelled by emotion, by the single story more than the global statistics. So I think you want to think really carefully about a story that's emotive, that's powerful, that's compelling, and that demonstrates the power and possibility of your solution. And then, of course, you want to be thinking about making sure you line up the right partners online to get maximum visibility. You could go a crowdfunding route. If you're going to do crowdfunding using video, then you really need to be sort of in a maker orientation. Most of the crowdfunding venues, like Kickstarter, for example, people are giving for a very concrete, tangible good, and you've got to incentivize it with the range of prizes. There are others, like Global Giving, for example, where people are a little more flexible about what impact their gift will have in the end. So just thinking carefully also about what are you selling? Are you selling an idea? Are you selling a product like a hand pump that will give people in Africa the opportunity to irrigate their fields? Or are you selling them a program, one that uses sport to energize and build self-esteem and help students navigate conflict more nonviolently? And just make sure you tell a story that's well adapted to that particular solution, and that you have a set of partners that will give you the visibility that you need. I think for fundraising, while online's a big opportunity and it's sort of growing relative to direct mail, for example, thinking of events-oriented, offline events-oriented uses of video can be very effective. We've often done donor cultivation events where we'll have a film about a project or a possibility, and it's used to set the stage for a conversation with a room full of 30 to 40 high net worth donors who could really make a difference.
So in the years since you first started working at Witness and on other projects, what's the single biggest change that you've witnessed in those years between how you used to approach video advocacy and how it's done today?
Well, I mean, when Witness was formed, it was really about giving cameras to the people. I mean, musician Peter Gabriel had this vision that these cameras that cost $1,800 when they first came out in the late 80s and early 90s should be available to human rights defenders so that they can make sure their stories were told and not buried and forgotten. These days, everybody has a camera in the palm of their hands. I mean, everybody's an exaggeration, but the market penetration for cameras and video-enabled cameras is just phenomenal. So that's totally changed the game, and Witness has evolved over time from an approach to providing the technology and technical and strategic guidance to use it, to a newer shift away from a partner-driven approach to providing technology and tools to helping think systemically about how video and citizen journalists can function safely in an area in which taking and uploading video can save lives, but it can also endanger them because of the dangers of geolocation and an ability to target people on the basis of when and where they've shot material.
So, in all the years you've been doing this kind of work, you've learned a lot. What's the single biggest thing that you've learned that you wish you had known years before that you definitely know now?
So I think one thing that's a really creative tension in developing a piece of media that could make a difference in the world is that you want to enroll partners early and often. You want to engage them early in the process as you're starting to think about the film, particularly with other NGO partners. Get them excited about it. Make sure there's a sense of authorship and co-ownership so they have an investment in that product and in its life cycle. But the flip side of that is you don't want to begin your engagement process so early in the trajectory of a film that by the time the film is actually available to them and you can put it in their hands, they've moved on to another organization or it's no longer a programmatic priority for that institution. This is more a problem when you're talking about a theatrical film like the one I just produced called Citizen Coke, where we began conversations early in pre-production, and it was 2 years from pre-production to the point where we completed the theatrical release, and now it's available on DVD. And there was a lot of staff turnover in that period of time and programmatic shifts. So I think while it's really important to engage people early, really try to consider the life cycle of the film and know and understand the point at which you're likely to be able to put that in people's hands so that you don't whet the appetite too soon and nobody's expectations are frustrated.
Gillian, thank you so much for engaging with the Engaging Networks community.
Thank you for having me.